I have the pleasure of introducing Tara Taylor for our session titled Advancing LGBTQ+ Inclusion, Language, Laws, and Lessons for the Workplace. For additional information, please check the app. Now please join me in welcoming Tara.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am so honored and thrilled that you chose this session to come to. So if you're just joining, feel free. There's lots of seats up front. Welcome, welcome. Feel free to wiggle around and share some extra space with your friends nearby. So thank you again for joining me around this important topic. I'm here to offer you lots of tips and tools and takeaway information to hopefully level up your LGBTQ+ awareness. I'm going to pull apart all the alphabet of letters and help give you some common language so we're all sort of understanding the same terminology. And then hopefully my slide deck has made it into the resources for you. You have that after today, or you can follow along. Plus, I've given you a big resource guide with links to everything I'll be talking about and more so that you can share it with your home organizations. Sound good? Yeah? All right, so what I would like you to do is very quickly turn to someone next to you that you don't know and give them a reason why you showed up for today's session. I'm giving you 30 seconds. Turn. All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.5, 1. Welcome back. Thank you. You have a new friend in the audience, hopefully. Somebody else who's feeling like they need some more information as well on this topic. So please say your welcome and goodbye and all that when you leave the room too, because everybody here is going to be an ally and a supporter in learning more about this topic. All right, we're going to hop in. I'm going to talk pretty quickly. Those of you who are online, we're so glad you're here too. So I'm going to include you as well. And then if we have questions and time at the end, I'll absolutely take them. But also, I want you to know that you can reach out to me anytime after today's session to ask me a question. I really want everybody to feel like they've got a resource to come to, somebody who can struggle through a situation with them. I spent 20 years working in civil rights for state government, and now I work for a consulting firm, and I'm a mediator and facilitator by trade. So I have spent 20 years listening to people have disputes, oftentimes involving their identity, race, age, disability, ethnicity, sexual orientation. And it pains my heart to see people have to go through that in the workplace where they spend so much of their time, but it's also taught me a lot about how to honor where people are, help them communicate across differences, and so I'm hopeful that the information I'm going to share to you is also going to come with a lot of understanding and care from the work that I've done. So let's hop into our topic. We are going to be talking about advancing lesbian, bisexual, gay, transgender, queer, questioning, and other sexual and gender minoritized and marginalized individuals. That was a big mouthful, right? All the alphabet. I did it pretty well. I stumble over it too, and I do this all the time. So it's okay if you stumble around. The idea that you're here and you're trying is really powerful. So I'm going to continue to try to say the letters and say the alphabet out loud and untangle some words. That's okay. But I do want to share with you that interestingly, right, everybody always says, well, how many people in my organization really identify that way? Do I really need to care about this? 8% of the US population openly identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, or questioning. 9% identify globally. What we know as researchers and those of us who educate in this space, that number's likely far higher because there is still a risk involved with openly identifying to an audience, to your employer, to your community, that you identify as one of the letters. So 8% in the US is 25 million people. If it's more than that, right? We know that individuals are in your workplaces, in your community, right? In your extended family, right? So these are really important guidelines and tips and tools that you can carry with you, not just in the workplace, but in life. So today I'm going to go over understanding the differences between gender, identity, and sexuality. They're all kind of different, although connected. We're going to talk a little bit about the lived experiences of LGBTQ individuals here in the US in particular. We're going to give a little bit of a discussion around legal considerations, some updates for you all for your workplace so that you kind of understand what the guidelines and compliance issues are. And then I'm going to hopefully give you a lot of best practices all along the way to take back, implement today. These are easy ones that you can share with anybody on your team in your workplace, and also to bring awareness if you haven't started to think about these topics. All right, so let's start out here. And again, you can follow along with the slides if you want. These terms up here are often tangled up. Biological sex, sex assigned at birth is one you all might have heard about, and I'm going to talk about it in a minute. What's the difference between gender and gender identity and sexual orientation? What does gender expression mean? For some of you, that's a totally new one. So I'm going to pull all these apart gently, but also give you a resource for after today, because it's a lot coming at you if you haven't thought about this at all. So has anybody seen this lovely diagram? It's called the genderbread person. I see a few hands shake. Oh, okay, but not as many hands. So this is freely available for you to download online. There are many iterations of the genderbread person. I like this because it helps to pull apart the terms that we just put up on the screen there. So let's start at the top with gender. What the heck is gender? So I always tell people gender is the norms, behaviors, characteristics that society has decided is appropriate for male, female, or those who don't necessarily ascribe to the binary, to the either or, male or female. But it's what society tells us is appropriate, normal, acceptable within those confines. What's interesting is gender morphs over time and across culture. So what is appropriate in one culture for a man to do may not be as appropriate for a man to do in another culture. That may also not seem the same. Male-identified folks may not show up the same in culture, in voice, in the way they communicate with others. So for example, in the US, it may, years ago, not have been as appropriate for men to have longer hair. Right now it's kind of, my son has much longer hair, so he's playing with the boundaries there. But in other cultures, long hair on a male-identified person would be a sign of strength and virility, right? So it means something different across culture and across time. If I had been giving you this presentation 50 years ago, it would have been inappropriate for me to wear pants, right? Much less have flats on. I would have had heels and stockings and all, right? Because that's how a female was supposed to look, dress, and act. So gender is what society tells us. Gender identity on my genderbread person, it's pointing to the brain. It's how you see yourself in relation to gender, regardless of what society tells you. It's how you feel, what you've learned, what you've grown up seeing with gender around you. It's the media messages you've received, but it's how you see yourself in relation to gender. This is a really important one that I'm going to come back to in a few minutes and do a kind of neat exercise to help you understand it a little bit more. But let me keep moving. So gender expression is that dotted line that's going around the genderbread person. That's all the ways that you outwardly show the world who you are. It might be in your dress, your hair, jewelry or no jewelry, makeup or no makeup, the way you stand, the way you sit. All of that is communicating a message to those around you. And our society has decided what is sort of appropriate and not appropriate for masculine versus feminine identified folks. Right? Women were usually taught early on when you sit, you cross your legs, right? You cross your ankles. Men do the, right? Not all men do that. Not all women do that, right? But we all laugh because we've heard it. We've been well socialized, right? To know what is appropriate and what is not appropriate within our cultural context. So expression is the way we express ourselves to the world. Now I'm going to move on to the little more complicated one, sex. Sex is about your physiological and biological components. It's the XY chromosome or the XX chromosome. It's your outward sex characteristics like a penis or a testes or breasts. And interestingly, this was called sex for a long time. We now call it sex assigned at birth. Because when you're born, right, typically some medical provider is there, and the first thing they say is what? It's a boy, it's a girl. They assign the gender based on the external visible characteristics. And those don't always match the physiology that's going on in the body. So we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. Last characteristic I'm going to talk about is matters of the heart, right? It's pointing to the heart. This is your sexual orientation. This is who you love, who you're attracted to. And this is the tricky one, right? Because all of us know somebody that is attracted to somebody else, and you go, I have no idea what they see in that person, right? I just don't get it. I'm never going to get it. All right, if that's your thing, right? Because it's hard to understand attraction and drive like that. And nobody could tell you, oh, you should be with this person, right? You should be with a 5'10", dark hair. Right? You go, yes, but that's not who I'm attracted to, right? We decide who we're attracted to. So your orientation is baked in. I like to think about it. It's baked in early on and is very separate from your gender and how you communicate who you are to the world. All right, so let's double click just a little bit down into my diagram. Whoa, now everybody's like, wait a minute, now you're giving me grids and axes and it's too much. All right, but remember, you can look at my diagram in the slide deck and you can Google this. So up at the top is gender identity, that blue category, right? And it's kind of on an axis between masculine, feminine, because that's the binary we all grew up with. You're one or the other, right? There wasn't room for something more expansive. But here's where that term transgender comes in. Anybody think they could say exactly what a transgender definition is? Anybody feel like totally confident? Raise your hand if you're totally confident in how to describe that. Oh, thank you all for being so honest. I love it. I love it. Yeah, it is super, super confusing, right? And that's okay. You're going to walk away today with a little bit more information, and then you'll feel a little bit more confident talking about it. And I am here to make you feel a little more confident and courageous in broaching this topic with those around you. So a transgender individual, right? Trans comes from a chemistry term from across from or on the other side of. Across from or on the other side of. So transgender, if you can read my definition up here, it's used to describe somebody whose identity, who they see themselves as, doesn't match the sex they were assigned at birth or what society's telling them they should be. Right? So it's different from. Now, some of you have heard the term a trans woman, a trans man. I just wanted to clarify for us today that a transgender man or male is someone who was born female, assigned at birth female. Oh, and remember, when you're a baby, all you have to look at is basically a penis or vagina, right? So external characteristics is all they're basing that on. Assigned female, but then identifies as male. Does not feel that the female identity works for them. So a transgender male is somebody born female, identifies as male. Transgender female is somebody born male, identifies as female. Okay? I know it's more complicated than me just going, this is what it is, right? And it's also so important to be thoughtful about, I'm going to always come back to how you identify is the most important thing, and how you tell the world to treat you is the most important thing. So, transgender across from, anybody heard of the term cisgender? Okay, that's coming more popular, right? And everybody's going, I don't know where that fits in either. You're going to give me another word? All right, it's okay. It's all right. So cisgender, also from Latin and a chemistry term, on the same side or same side of, means that your sex assigned at birth is the same as the way you identify, is the same as the world sees you. So I was born female. You all see me as female, most likely, hair, right? I'm doing all the things that are sort of more on the feminine side. And I identify as female. So it all lines up, all matches up, right? Transgender is somebody whose identity does not match in the neat buckets that society told them. Doesn't necessarily match the way they were born and assigned at birth, doesn't necessarily match the way the world sees them, okay? You got these slides, you can go back to them. There's no quiz at the end, I promise you, okay? This is just helpful information. So let's go back, right? Gender identity. Gosh, some of us were very fortunate. We were born into the body that we identify with. The doctor said, it's a girl. I identify as a girl. All worked out, right? Life was pretty easy for me in that aspect. Those who don't identify in the same way that they were assigned at birth, it's different, right? It's different for them. Their identity doesn't match up with the world's telling them they should be. So you've learned a little bit about transgender and cisgender, and you've got great resources for me in your SHRM app that are going to be there for you after this. Don't worry, you'll have lots to look back on. And then there's all these other terms that are what I call gender expansive, and you may have heard of some of these. Gender queer, gender nonconforming, agender, gender inclusive. I put a lot of them up there, right? So this is where somebody is saying, I don't fit neatly into the binary box of either female or male. Perhaps I'm a little of both. Perhaps I'm outside what society says are the two choices I have. And guess what? For thousands and thousands of years, there have been people who have identified outside the binary across all cultures, across all time. And if you look in history books, if you look past, across all these cultures, there have been third gender, other genders, multi-gender, right? So this is not new. What is new now is that we're becoming more apt at voicing it. We're giving words to it. It's a little safer to identify outside of the binary, right? Not completely safe, but it's a little safer now. So you're going to hear those gender inclusive terms, perhaps, as you are in your workplaces. All right, so where this plays out in the workplace for you all is that sometimes people's gender, the way they identify, doesn't match up with what society assigned them. So there's some legal documents that are going to be impacted by this in the workplace. So for example, now 22 states and DC will allow you to either get a driver's license with gender X, right, which is not male, not female, right? Or you can change your driver's license to be gender X. So for those individuals who do not feel that they fit into one or the other, they can get a driver's license or change their driver's license. So if you require some sort of verification for employment status, you want to be aware that perhaps you're going to have someone for the first time with a gender X license that doesn't necessarily match up with their insurance, that doesn't necessarily match up with your software database. You want to be thinking about how are we going to handle that? How are we going to handle that? Also, a lot of the AI-generated software databases that automatically assign gender are not accommodating to gender X. However, this is a legal driver's license document that you can show for identity, and you're allowed to get that in gender X. So just be thoughtful about that. Also, all US passports now can also either be given or changed to show gender X. All 50 states. So you may have individuals, employees, who have different forms of identification with different genders. And just be thinking about how are we going to reconcile that? What do we need to do in our database systems to make sure that we are allowing that space? And I'm going to give you some hints as we go through today, okay? But wanted you to know that that could be surfacing if you haven't seen it yet. So let's hop back to my genderbread friend, right? We've learned a little bit about gender identity, transgender, cisgender, a little bit about gender expansive terms, gender nonconforming, gender queer. Side note, queer is a term that has been used against the LGBT community for eons. It's a slur. It's been used in negative ways. It is being reclaimed by the LGBTQ community, right? To own it and to feel good about it. But it would not be appropriate for you if you are not It would not be appropriate for you to call someone queer unless that's how they refer to themselves and they've told you that it's okay to refer to them that way. That make sense? Okay, because it's got a history of hate. We have a lot of words in our English language around identity that have been used as weapons, and queer is one of them. And it's wonderful that it's being repurposed, but you always want to make sure that you're clear that that person also agrees and wants to be referred to that way. So tip to take away, right? That's a good one. All right. So we're going to keep moving on here. We did gender identity. Gender expression is the way you dress, you behave, you act, you talk, that communicates to the world. Did you know that within less than half a second, we ascribe gender to somebody, even from 500 feet away? That's how quickly. Race and gender, that quickly. Because we were well socialized. Oh, that's how a man walks. That's how a woman stands. That's how length of hair is supposed to be. Right? So our brains are biased, right? Bias happens to all of us. If you have a brain, you have bias. But bias comes because we were socialized, we were taught ways to think about society. And so our brains very quickly bucket people into the either or, male or female. So for those of you who've never thought about this before, you're like, whoa, this is so much information, right? And that's okay. I'm loving that you're here. I'm welcoming that you're here. I love that you're just willing to learn about it. And you know that the way you see yourself is different, gender identity, from the way you express yourself to the world. And then we've got this biological sex one. Remember that I said the doctor assigns sex at birth, right? And what they see externally on the baby sometimes does not match with what's going on inside the body. So there are about 1 to 2% of the population that are intersex. All right? Anybody heard the term hermaphrodite? All right, so that is actually a misnomer. That word, hermaphrodite, would mean you would have all the sex characteristics of a female and all the sex characteristics of a male. It's impossible. Your body cannot do that. But an intersex person may have characteristics of both. So they may have a vagina on the outside when the baby's born, but have testes inside, or have an extra chromosome, or may later develop more testosterone in their body. So there's a mix going on that is outside the traditional binary. Most people don't know they're intersex until, one, they go to have children and find out that perhaps they're unable to fertilize an egg or unable to produce active sperm, and it's because they don't have quite the mix of chromosomes and biological components. Or in an autopsy later on, they may find that there was something internal that wasn't visible externally. 1 to 2% of the population, right? So a couple million people intersex. So I just want you to know that, again, throughout time, not everybody has fit in these two buckets very cleanly. All right, so then let's go down to the last one we've talked about, sexual orientation. Remember, this is about who you love, who you're attracted to, and you may hear some words that are newer. So someone who is pansexual, right? Pan means all. So pansexual is sort of replacing the term for bisexual. Bisexual reinforces that there's only two, male and female. There's only two ways you can go. Pansexual means I'm attracted to who I'm attracted to because of who they are inside, regardless of the package. Right? I'm attracted to the person. Okay? Asexual are people who do not have sexual inclination or sexual motivation. So they may be married, but they don't have a sexual drive or a sexual inclination. So asexual, much more on that can be found. And then some people still do identify as bisexual because it was really the only word years ago to say that I was attracted to someone other than the opposite sex, right? So language is also catching up, right? So a lot of times when I work with college students, they're on the cutting edge. They have all the words, right? And it comes later. But guess what? We all know Gen Z's, Generation Z is who's coming in now, right? Heavy. So you're going to be hearing this language more and more as you continue to hire and recruit in those spaces. All right, so we had all 4 dimensions up there. I want to spend just a minute with everybody talking about identity again, because this one's really important. So this is audience participation. Are you ready? Okay, those of you online, you are participating as well. So here's what we're going to do. My first question to you is, I want you to raise your hand or put a 1 in the chat if you're virtual. If you're somebody who exercises, works out, goes to the gym, rides a bike, plays a sport, plays on a team, if you do any of those things, raise your hand. Oh, look around. We got a lot of people. Yep. Almost everybody. All right, and I'm going to assume, I don't know if Vanessa's still here, but there probably are a lot of ones in the chats as well, right? All right, keep that in mind. Now I want you to raise your hand or put a 2 in the chat if you're somebody who sings in the shower, plays an instrument, you're in a band or a choir, right? You have some, you hum along to music. Anybody who does that? Oh my gosh, yeah. I really don't, I know. Yeah, that was just as many people, and probably a lot of 2s in the chat as well. Yeah, they popping up. All right, thank you. All right, number 3. If you cook, grill, bake, have ever made yourself a sandwich, you cook for your family, raise your hand. Yep, everybody. Are there 3s in the chat? 3s? Yes. Okay, good. So keep this in mind next. For those of you who raised your hand the first time, you exercise, you work out, you all that. Raise your hand if you consider yourself an athlete. You'd say, I'm an athlete. Oh, let me, 1, 2, 3. All right, so there's maybe like 8 or 9 of you out of all that room. Okay. All right, so not as many people. All right, how about the people who said that they cook, grill, bake, follow a recipe? Oh, I'm sorry, no, this was the singing, the humming, the playing. Yes, how many consider a musician? If you sing in the shower, you play an instrument, you're in a choir, 10, 12, maybe out there. Okay, far fewer. Far fewer. All right. And chat folks, you're going to do this along with me as well. Put a 3 in the chat if you consider yourself a chef. Raise your hand if you consider yourself a chef. Those of you who cook, bake, follow the... Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? No chefs in the room. 3, 2, 3, okay. Oh my goodness, so interesting to me. So tell me, why don't we claim the identity if we do the behavior? So I would love for somebody to raise their hand, and I'll try to repeat it for those of you online. If you cooked, you baked, or you worked out, but you said, I'm not an athlete, I'm not a chef. I even saw some of you in the front row. You were like, It's a what definition? Societal definition of what an athlete or what a musician. Yes, that's a great example. Why else didn't you raise your hand? Yes, please, ma'am.
I'm an amateur, I'm not a pro.
Oh, I'm an amateur, I'm not a pro. So the pro is the athlete. Okay. Why else? Yes, please, Vanessa.
Connection to a larger community.
Oh, connection to a lot, right? Like I'm not an athlete, I'm not part of a team, I'm just out there like on my treadmill. Yeah. Any others? Yes, please.
Like the box that you might be put into because of said label.
Oh, the box you might be put into. Yeah, if I'm an athlete, now I got to really perform. Yeah. I got to make sure I can run a 6-minute mile. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And I've had people tell me, well, I don't get paid for it. I didn't go to school for it, right? All the things. So it's always fascinating to me that identity isn't necessarily connected to the behavior. And that's like gender and gender identity, right? Just because you tell me I'm female or tell me I'm male because I had the body part doesn't mean that's how I feel in the world. Doesn't mean that's how I see myself, right? So for those of you who went and kind of pushed back on the identity, I want you to remember that if and when you encounter somebody who is telling you that their identity, their gender identity, is different than the way the world sees them, they are telling you who they are, right? And we all get to decide who we are, and we're asking the world to treat us in the way that we want to be treated, okay? So if you pushed back on that identity, remember, that's what that person's doing is, that doesn't fit me, that doesn't work for me, okay? So that's the distinction on gender identity. So I hope you remember that as we go forward, and I'm going to jump into some of the legal pieces for you all to remember. Okay, so for those of you who perhaps don't know this law as well, I'm going to just give you a little quickie 30-second lesson. Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 is the federal law that protects people from employment discrimination based on their race, their age, their religion, their disability. Many of you know this in the HR space. Sexual orientation and gender identity are not protected classes in Title VII. Race, age, religion, okay, but sexual orientation and gender identity are not included. So it's been tough for many, many years to be protected from being discriminated against in your employment situation because it wasn't codified in federal law. However, in 2020, the Supreme Court ruled that the Civil Rights Act now has protections for gay, lesbian, and transgender employees under the protected class of sex. So it's not written in the law, but case law operates that way now because of that Supreme Court decision. Now what's tricky is federal law is limited because it only protects employees with 15 or more employees. So there's still this loophole for small organizations that have less than 15 employees. Hypothetically, they could legally discriminate against someone because of their sexual orientation and their gender identity. And because it's not codified in the civil rights law, we're relying on case law and judges to continue to add those protections. But it's not written into the law, right? So it's like people telling you, yeah, for right now you have your rights. For right now you do. Until some judge decides you don't, right? It's a little scary, a little scary. Also, there is a patchwork of state and local laws that also protect or don't protect individuals based on their sexual orientation and gender identity. So where the yellow is are the 24 states and 3 territories, along with Washington, D.C., that do have state laws or statutes that protect against employment discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. However, some of them only protect state employees and not private employees. Some of them, it's only a city ordinance and not a state law. So again, a patchwork of laws and regulations. And you can imagine, I live in Maryland. If I go work in West Virginia, that's going to be different, right? Maryland protects me, West Virginia doesn't. Or the city I work in protects me, but not where I live. And along with that, the last 2 years, 2024 and 2023, over 500 anti-LGBTQ bills have been introduced in state and local legislatures. Everything from healthcare protections to education to finance, business loans, all of it feel precarious for somebody who identifies as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, or queer because this is coming at them regularly in the states in which they work to know, do I have rights? Do I not have rights? Is it going to be today? Is it going to be tomorrow? Right? That can be a really scary place to live and work. So what that means is that workplaces need to know that folks are coming in with feeling unsure at a minimum, uncertain about where their protections are. Also, every year since 2014, hate crimes against LGBTQ individuals have continued to rise. They're roughly 20% of all hate crimes every year, only second to race. Okay? Hate crimes committed on the basis of race, number 1. For sexual orientation and gender identity, number 2. Every year since 2014. Most of those crimes of hate are committed against gay men across the US, all 50 states. So if you are somebody in your workplace who doesn't feel safe because of all these reasons, legislation, hate crimes, you might be afraid to walk to your car by yourself. You might be afraid to come into the office. You might be wondering whether that team member who's new is going to be accepting of you. You might be thinking, can I be my whole and authentic self? So I want to share a couple of statistics that are always staggering for me to sort of put on my workplace HR hat and think, what does this matter for me in the workplace? Over 45% of all employees, both LGBTQ and non-LGBTQ, report hearing anti-LGBTQ remarks in the workplace across all work types, up from C-suite down to your line workers. Almost half of people are openly hearing these comments. Also, 1 in 10 employees have heard their own supervisor make negative comments against LGBTQ individuals, and 1 in 10 workers have actually left a job because the environment was not accepting of LGBTQ individuals. 1 in 5 LGBTQ workers avoid the social aspects of work. They don't go to the retirement parties or the happy hours. And I find that really tough because that's where people connect. Right? That's where they feel they belong to a group. They start to know their coworkers. And if they don't have that, if they're avoiding it for fear of being treated differently or worse, then they're not building that connection to stay either. And all of that really has led to this number, which year after year after year, I keep hoping it's going to change as I do the research. But nearly 50% of LGBTQ employees are not out at work. So if you're sitting there going, well, I don't have anybody on my staff. I'm going to learn this stuff, but I don't have anybody on my staff. You do. You do. Okay? And so what can we do? What are the practices that you all can take back to start to be more aware, to start to be practicing inclusion, and to start to model this for not only your HR team, but everybody in your organization? So I'm going to talk a little bit and move very quickly, but here are some top best practices. All right, I'm going to talk about pronouns because everybody asked me about pronouns. And they are important, right? Pronouns matter because much like getting your name right, getting the way that you identify your pronouns correct is a form of respect. It doesn't cost anything, but it gains you so much, right? So for those of us who are female identified and our sex assigned at birth, we're female, and everybody, the world reads us as female, we've really probably never thought about the pronouns we use. Somebody who was born male, identifies as male, probably never thought much about it. For those individuals who perhaps the way they identify doesn't match the sex they were assigned at birth or the way the world sees them, it matters a lot to get their pronoun and their name correct. So I'm always thinking about this is a form of mutual respect and courtesy. It can be challenging. However, if you work to get this right and correct yourself when you don't, you're going to go a long way for creating some real empowerment for those around you. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to show you the most common pronouns out there to replace she and he. I think in 2015, Webster's Dictionary, the word of the year was they. The word of the year was they because it can be used to replace the singular he or she. MLA, APA, the news media, all of it now has approved they to replace the singular. So at the top is the traditional male. He laughed, I called him, his eyes were open. Traditional female is she. She laughed, I called her, her eyes are open. The yellow and the pink are the most common gender neutral or gender inclusive pronouns. They to replace the singular. So instead of he went to the store, they went to the store. Instead of I picked that up for him, I picked that up for them. Right? Just a simple replacement for the singular. Or Z, here, and here's. So instead of he, Z, he went to the store, Z went to the store. Now, again, you don't have to feel overwhelmed that you have to learn this, right? I'm just one in the 60 minutes, I'm going to introduce you that these are pronouns that are out there. So that if you hear them, you're a little bit in the know, right? Give me a little extra, you're in the know, so that you don't get caught off guard. And somebody may say, these are my pronouns that I prefer to use, Z, here, or here's. Yes, it is work to learn it. But guess what? You also learned it when Christopher told you to call him Chris, or Samantha told you to call him Sam, right? Just like when people have a name that you can't pronounce, or a nickname that's not on their paperwork. You learn it, right? And you work hard because you want to show them the respect to get their name right. Pronouns are the same way. It, again, costs you nothing, but it is going to go miles and miles for somebody to feel like you're working to include them, you heard them, you're honoring who they are. I think Maya Angelou is the one who said, when somebody shows you who they are, believe them. I'm getting that quote wrong for those of you who are quoters, but put that in the chat to me. All right, so you're going to see these pronouns in lots of places. I see it a lot in communication. So it's going to come in email signatures. Here's mine, right? I put my pronouns right down there, and I have a link to mypronouns.org because somebody doesn't have to ask me. They can just click on mypronouns.org, and it's going to tell them all about it. Okay? So they can learn on their own. It's totally fine. Email signatures. Business cards. Absolutely, you can add it on there. Also on your virtual platform. If you're using Team or Zooms or Adobe Connect, there is a 3-dot click where you can just simply rename yourself and add your pronouns in there. It's a great way to just communicate that I get pronouns are tricky and I want to get yours right, so I'm putting mine out there. You might see them on name tags. I think there's on the SHRM thing, you can add your pronouns, a little sticky note, right? And then also on social media, super easy to do. So for accessibility purposes, I have this little, I'd circled it for you. There's a little microphone, looks like, an amplifier. I not only recorded how to say my name so that people can push it and hear it, which is a great thing to do for all your employees, right? I also added my pronouns. Super simple. All you have to do is in LinkedIn or wherever you are, you can add that no problem in your settings. So some of you are going, but how do I know what pronouns somebody weird? That feels weird to ask them, right? Okay, it might feel a little weird the first 5, 6, 7 times. It really does. It took me a long time to get it. But you can be proactive by sharing yours either virtually or asking them in the moment. So you can say, hi, I'm Tara. I use she, her pronouns. I'm gonna do that with everybody when I hire them. When I interview somebody, I say, hi, so great to meet you. I'm Tara. I use she, her pronouns. Feel free to let me know yours if you'd like. Right? You can also ask, what are your pronouns? What pronouns would you like me to use for you? How would you like me to refer to you? Right? We do this all the time with names. Absolutely the same process. And again, for those that it matters to, it really matters. They know you get it, right? And they're going to be much more likely to come to you when there's a problem, which is what we really want. We don't want that problem to turn into a conflict down the road. We want to know about it. Here are also some simple language swaps. Okay, remember you got this in your slide deck, but absolutely take a picture. So I don't love it when somebody goes, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here for my session, right? Because I've already told them I don't get gender, right? And a simple way to do is, hey everyone, hey folks, how are you all doing? Just drop the gendered words out of our lingo. Maternity or paternity leave, parental leave, right? I love that my kids, the form home now, instead of it saying mom or dad, you know, for signature, it says you're grown up. Take this home to you're grown up, right? It's not even a gender thing. It's kids are raised by aunts and uncles and grandparents, and right? So it's including everybody rather than excluding. Husband, wife, boyfriend, simple swap, significant other, partner, right? Absolutely making them feel welcome. I do a little swap instead of saying, I put partner before wife or husband. Because again, we always seem to add on like the person who's the outsider of the group. So, oh yeah, or your partner, right? Like your wife or your husband or your partner. No, try to say it first, right? That's a really good way to train your brain to just sort of be thinking about how do I be a little bit more inclusive. Mr., Miss, and Mrs., we're going to talk about how to replace that in a moment. The last one at the bottom, if you take nothing else away from my session, right? Drop sexual preference from your vocabulary. It is sexual orientation. Preference is I like to have pizza on Friday night. Okay, I like to do my laundry on Sundays. That's a preference. Your orientation is how you're oriented, right? It's your heart. Who you're attracted to, how you want to be in the world, that's orientation. I love this one too. Simple, simple. When you are greeting others, just be thinking about how we can maybe remove gender from that basic communication step. So instead of Mr., Mrs., ma'am, sir, I know I was raised the same way that many of you were, that anybody who's a day older than me, you say ma'am, you say sir. And I get that it has all kinds of cultural implications as well. I really do. And when you misgender somebody, it's really hard to back out of it, right? You feel weird, they feel weird, then you have to remember, right? So I'm really trying to kind of help everybody in that situation by taking that out. We're going to talk about communication and written communication in a second. So just being mindful of your language. Here's where it shows up in the HR setting. Data collection, software systems, applications for jobs, forms, right? We all know that always the first question after what's your name? What's your gender, right? And you get 2 boxes, one or the other to choose from. And so automatically, anybody who doesn't identify within the binary is going, this company doesn't get it, and which one am I going to put, right? So their nerves are already through the roof at this point. So instead, give them an option like, multiple options, female, male, non-binary, third gender, prefer not to say, right? You can do a lot of different options that are still checkbox. So if you've got a form and you need the checkboxes, I love the open-ended there at the bottom. What's your gender? What gender do you identify with? Right? Let them fill it in. If you have that option, it's terrific. If you have a funder that requires you to report the gender, that's okay. You can still put a disclaimer at the top that says something like, we get that gender doesn't neatly fit into 2 boxes, or we get that your gender may not match with the options provided. Please provide us information so that we can make sure to get it right with you, right? 1 or 2 little lines. I add that to all of our forms. We get that this may not match the way you identify. So already I'm just telling them, hey, I get it, this funder, the federal government's requiring me to check off this box, but I get that this might not work for you. That little bit is going to be super helpful. What I don't want you to do is add an other box, right? Who identifies as other? Nobody wants to be an other, right? Nobody wants to be an other. So try to take that one off of your list because, again, it really communicates exclusion. I don't love it for race either. You know, are you Hispanic, non-Hispanic, other? Wait a minute. You know, that's just not giving anybody the honor of their identity. Also, greetings and salutations on letters and emails. We are so used to the formal Miss, Mr., and Mrs., right? Does it ever change for the Mr.? Some of you are going, wait a minute, is that true? Yeah, never changes for the male identified folks. But for women, we go from Miss, M-I-S-S, to MS, little one, to the MRS when you're married. And then if you're divorced, or you're like, where do you go back to? You never get to go back, right? So I'm just thinking, let's sweep away all the gender, right? We don't necessarily need all of that. So instead, in your correspondence, you could swap out for first name, last name, or the role they play. Dear colleague, dear client, right? Dear Tara Taylor, put the whole name in there. Also, there are a lot of names that are difficult to tell whether they are traditionally male or female, or can be used for both, right? So again, it's kind of helping you not misgender somebody accidentally. So just swapping out a full name, and honestly, your forms will love that, right? Your databases, your auto-populate will love it. And then this is my favorite. I get this 10 times a day. I don't know where. Every restaurant I go to, I sit down and they go, hey guys. I'm like, I am okay. Right? Hey guys. Instead of hey guys, what could you say instead? Y'all, everyone, folks, or just drop it. Good morning. Right? You don't have to have a gendered term there. But I love that there are lots of different ones to use. Right? My kids catch me now every time, Mom, we are not guys. I have a son and a daughter, and they will catch me all the time. So find an accountability partner, somebody sitting here maybe that works with you, or somebody when you go back to go, can you catch me when I say, hey guys, I'm really trying to work against that, right? Find an accountability partner for any of these best practices. Because honestly, having somebody else who's got your back and who's supporting you is gonna make this 10 times easier. Put a jar on your desk for the 25 cents every time you say, hey guys, right? Or Miss or Mrs. Because these are practices that, again, don't cost you anything to implement, but gain you so much in employee rapport, trust, confidence, longevity with the company or the organization. I'm going to briefly talk about bathrooms, because who doesn't want to know about bathrooms, right? Anytime we talk about gender, I get bathroom questions. All right. So there's all these signs up here. I wanted to show you because there's a lot of different options. The one on the bottom left is actually a printed sign that was at a company where they just printed it off their computer, and it says gender inclusive restroom. Anyone may use this restroom regardless of gender identity or expression, is what it says real small down there, right? All gender, gender inclusive, gender neutral. So here's what OSHA has to say about bathroom guidance for anyone operating in the US. It's a lot here, but I'm going to go over the 3 boxes in the blue. Employees cannot be asked to provide any medical or legal documentation of their gender identity in order to have access to a gender-appropriate bathroom. I'm going to stop here for 1 second. Remember when I talked about transgender, cisgender individuals? There are many individuals who were born assigned a certain sex at birth, who don't identify that way, who will never change their body, right? Who like the body they're in, they just don't identify with the way society's telling them to live. Or they have a medical condition that would prevent them from going through hormone treatment, or their insurance doesn't cover it, right? There's lots of reasons why a transgender individual may not decide to have any kind of change, surgery, hormone therapy, anything like that. So don't make that assumption that that's happening. And also, that person to use the bathroom they identify with does not have to provide you with any kind of medical documentation. All right? Also, that second box, employees should not be required to use a segregated facility apart from other employees because of their gender identity or transgender status. They should be able to use the bathroom with which they identify. So if someone was born male and they identify as female, they are permitted to use the female bathroom. You cannot ask them to go an unreasonable distance away from the bathroom either in a segregated location. So employees may not be limited to using facilities that are an unreasonable distance or travel time. So just for a moment, I want you to think about another identity category. So let's not think about sexual orientation or gender identity, but if somebody said, because you're black, you have to go use the bathroom in the Lakeside Center, only there, and you gotta walk over there and get it. Because you're Jewish, you need to go over to the South Building and use it, right? Because you are Afghani, I'm gonna need you to go downstairs and use the bathroom. We wouldn't think that was appropriate for any other identity, all right? And that's why it's protected by the law and you can't ask people to do that. So the core principle here is all employees have a right to a safe environment to use the restroom. Nobody should be holding, their biological functions while at work. All the way back in 2015, the EEOC, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, ruled that a transgender employee cannot be denied access to the common restrooms used by other employees of the same gender identity, regardless of whether that employee has had any medical procedure or whether other employees may have negative reactions to allowing employees to do so. That's a really big one, because a lot of you I know are going, yeah, but it's going to make the other employees uncomfortable, right? Swap in any other identity. We wouldn't say it's okay because I don't want to use a restroom with a black person. I don't want to use a restroom with an Asian person, right? We would all go, what are you talking about? You can have that belief, but not at work. It's illegal at work. And that's going to be your, right? We do that for compliance on a lot of other issues. So the fix is 2 options. Single stall occupancy. You have a single stall that is not restricted to a specific gender, but we already have these family access bathrooms, all gender, right? They're already in many facilities. So that's the bathroom that you can have, or a multiple occupant like we have in this building where you go in and there's multiple stalls, but you can install extender flaps at the top and the bottom so they go all the way to the top, all the way to the bottom. They single lock. Right, there's all kinds of things you can do to make it more private, if that's the concern. OSHA has fabulous guidance on this. Just go to their website and Google OSHA restroom guidelines. Lots of information there. I know you all have probably a ton of questions, but I have 7 minutes left, and I'm going to leave you with a couple of thoughts, okay? All right, so when you're walking away today, here's a couple of best practices for everybody. Learning more about lived experiences of LGBTQ individuals and your employees. It's so critical, right? It is Pride Month, right? Woo! Thank you. Yes. All right. It's every June, and it's all year long. So you don't have to wait. You don't have to wait till June, right? But happy Pride Month. Pride Month is celebratory, but it's also a remembrance of a lot of hard-won battles, right, and still those to come, for continuing to make civil rights also part of LGBTQ rights. So learning about it, becoming more familiar with the language and the terminology. You sitting in here today does not mean you're going to be the expert and you're going to remember it all. That's okay, but you've been exposed, you have a little bit more confidence, the words aren't going to seem so unfamiliar, and then you're going to build on it, right? That's how we learn and grow. Gosh, if there's any other audience here who knows how to learn, grow, and adapt, it's you all, right? HR is doing that all the time. And this time it's for inclusion purposes, right? Sometimes we're like, I don't know why I'm learning this, piece of. Examine your policies and practices. Make sure that your policies and practices speak to gender inclusion and gender identity inclusion, and that it's not okay for anybody to retaliate against someone who is using the bathroom that they identify with, using pronouns, exhibiting, their gender expression, that kind of thing. Have a system, a specific system for reporting sexual orientation and gender identity harassment that commits to confidentiality. So it's not okay for you to decide to out somebody's orientation or identity as part of the process. So you have to be thoughtful about that. Just like your health and somebody's disability disclosure, you wouldn't be telling everybody else what their health condition is. You're not telling anybody what somebody's sexual orientation is or gender identity either. So making sure your policies really speak to that confidentiality aspect. And then offer some kind of ongoing education, even if it's a 1-hour session like this, right? I come into organizations all the time because I don't want this to be the scary topic. You can have questions, you can be confused, you can do all of that. But if you're here in relationship with me, then you want to learn. If you're in the organization, then you want to include people. And that goes a long, long way. So my best tip is always act as if an LGBTQ person is present. Because if you do, and they are, then you will be promoting and acting in a way that is inclusive in all the spaces. So I'm going to put up my last slide here. Look at me, I'm 4 minutes early. I'm so excited. You've got my slides to download. You've got resources. There is an amazing free resource called theconsciousstyleguide.com. Theconsciousstyleguide.com. It's in my resources. theconsciousstyleguide.com, all one word. And it's free for you to put in your application, put in your letter that you want to write, and it will do a gender decoding. It will tell you when you're using gendered language in the wrong way. It will tell you if you're doing pronouns incorrectly. It will help you out with language, and it's free for everything. Love that. It's one of my favorite resources. We have 3 minutes. I am super excited that you're here, and if there is a question, I would love to take it. And then if we run out of time, please come up and see me. Who has a question? Yes, please, right in the center.
It's more of a statement. One of the things that really helps my organization with this is you don't have to understand someone in order to respect them. And that's just something that we use across the board. And I think
love
it's
it.
helpful in understanding all this.
Yep, don't have to understand it to respect it, absolutely. If you have questions, come up. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a great rest of your day. Appreciate you being here.